I think that things have changed so quickly in the US over the last 100 days since Trump took office that everybody thinks that this is all very sudden. But I think if you look at the data, it's not sudden at all. There's been a long, simmering, brewing discontent in the US in certain pockets of the economy for 25 years or more. And I think that Trump has been very effective at seizing that, capturing that malaise and working with it. But these rapid changes are really the result of a long brewing struggle. I think the economic reality that people face in their day-to-day lives has an enormous influence on the way they perceive news and the types of news that they choose to consume. I think we make a big mistake when we look at aggregate statistics like unemployment, and we see unemployment converging across different areas. We see average incomes going up, but what that fails to capture is that the incomes of certain groups of people really haven't changed very much over the last 25 years. There have been pockets of big pockets of structural unemployment in the US that have led some people to have a very different economic reality persistently from other people around them. And I think this plays a huge role in the way people consume media, the things that they choose to believe, and the things that they sort of flock to, grasp onto in the media. I think if you look at the data going back 25 years, what you see pretty clearly is that there were certain groups of people who were working in the manufacturing sector, and they faced economic dislocation as these manufacturing jobs went overseas. Certain groups, especially white men, had a very hard time adjusting to the changes in the labor market that were occurring as a result of this demographic shift. And so they were dislocated from manufacturing jobs, and they had a hard time moving into the non-manufacturing jobs that took these other jobs' place. So you have certain groups in the economy who did a very good job of adjusting from leaving the manufacturing sector to going into the non-manufacturing sector. But these groups who lost manufacturing jobs and did not find their way back to employment really form the core of the discontent in the US economy. I've been very fortunate to work in the academic sector for most of my career. And when I was growing up, the message was very clear. Get an education, that's your ticket to success in life. The problem with that story today is that it's increasingly the case that access to elite educational opportunities is simply something that's only available to the very rich. There are broad swaths of the middle class in the US that are sort of structurally excluded from access to elite institutions. And so I think that's a big part of the reason why there is this backlash against these storied academic institutions in the US, is because they seem inaccessible. And in fact, they are if you look at the data. Someone in the top, family in the top income quintile in the US is more than twice as likely to send their kid to an elite institution as is someone in the middle of the income distribution. And that's holding constant the students' grades and test scores. So you take two equally qualified kids, the kid from the rich family is more than twice as likely to get into the elite institution. When you take that and you put it against this economic malaise that exists in certain pockets of the economy, it's easy to understand why there has been such a backlash against American academic institutions. Yeah, I do. I think we made a real mistake in the U.S. I think that if you go back 25 years, when all of this dislocation was beginning to happen in the manufacturing sector, we missed an opportunity to use our community college system much more aggressively as a way of providing reskilling and retraining to large groups of people who faced economic dislocation because of the loss of manufacturing jobs. And so, I think if we could go back in time and do it again, I think if we had been much more aggressive in the way that we offered those kind of retraining opportunities, I don't think we'd be where we are today. I think it's easy to look at the current situation and focus on the risk, but I actually think this is a golden moment for Europe. I actually think that you have a couple of forces that are kind of coming together that create this magic opportunity that, if Europe can seize it, could really transform innovation and entrepreneurship in Europe. You have massive increases in defense spending. You have basically a reshoring of supply chains and investment back into Europe. And you have a strong capital market and a lot of political will around promoting entrepreneurship and innovation. So if I was a young entrepreneur and I could plant myself anywhere in the world, I'd be very excited about being in Europe right now. I think if Europe can come together and seize this moment, Europe can really rise up out of this chaos as the sort of new, global leader. Oh, absolutely, and I think we see these frustrations playing out before our very eyes. Many of the same issues that you see in the U.S. are frustrating Swedish society. And the rise of populism in Sweden is a response to the very same economic forces that caused that rise in the U.S. So yeah, I see a lot of parallels between the U.S. and Sweden. I think the big difference in my mind is that because Sweden has a parliamentary democracy, because so many countries in Europe have parliamentary democracies, it really forces political parties to negotiate and balance. And you don't get these big tipping points like you have in American politics, where one party takes over and runs everything. So I think the same basic underlying forces are here in Sweden that are at work in the US. I just think that the structure of Swedish democracy allows it to manage those forces more effectively.